Hey everybody, how's everybody doing today? Thanks for joining me on my Thursday live stream where we, hang out, talk about photography, and also I do my best to answer any questions you might have about, Olympus cameras, workspace, or any kind of photography in general. It's always good to see everybody here. Let's see who's here so far. Still getting used to my new studio here I've set up. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. I think I got most of the kinks worked out in this new setup that I have here. And hold on, the audio is terrible, right? I got to put my mic on. I'm going to try a lav mic from now on. All right. Yeah, I'm a little bit on time today, right? I'm not like 10 or 15 minutes late like I usually am. But yeah, oh God, I got to move this window over. And then I can easily read what's going on. There we go. That's better. All right. So we have Jeff Painter. Awesome. And Joe, good to see you. You have a question there? Okay, I'll come back to that in a second. Torin, good to see you. Jonas, John Leach, Dave Nelson. Nature. All right. Jock. And Roberto. Carlos Garcia. Oh, I like that. You really got two Garcias in your name? That's cool. And let's see. You guys are talking about the fires. Yeah, I saw a little bit of that on the news. Hi, Barry. John Yutze. Nikon Mike. Yep. Bob. Good to see you. John Softly. Wow, it's late for you over there, but John is pretty... John joins me on almost every live stream, regardless what time of day it is for him. Could be like 1 in the morning, and he'll come on. And I got your email recently. I guess I already responded to that. And I also got an email from Bob this morning about the... I guess there was an interview with JIP talking about what they're going to do with Olympus. So we'll talk about that a little bit. But let's see. Joe had a question. It says here, I shoot an OMD1 Mark III... RAW to card 1, JPEG to card 2. If I select JPEG features such as noise reduction, will they be applied to my JPEG even though I'm similarly shooting RAW? Yes. Yes, whatever settings you have set in the camera, it's going to save that to the JPEG, regardless of what card you save it to. I've done that with art filters and things, and yeah, it goes right to card 2, no problem. What I typically do though is I buy larger cards like 256 and 512 meg, a lot because I do video, but and I write to both cards simultaneously, RAW and JPEG, and then I save video to card slot 2, because that's usually I put the 512 gig in the slot 2, and in slot 1 I put my 256, and I always do RAW plus JPEG to both in that case. Okay, let's see what else we got going on here. Rob, at what f-stop minimum do you get the most depth of field in general for OMDs? Well, depth of field is a function of, right, your aperture or f-stop, so as wide open as you can get, and then also distance to the subject from the camera, right? So the closer the subject, the more the shallower the depth of field will be. So I mean, I think like right now I'm shooting at f2 on this camera, but f2 or better will give you a nice depth of field at 45 millimeters. So it's a function of distance to the subject, focal length, and your aperture. So aperture, always go as wide as you can on the lens that you have. So if it's a kit lens, it might be f3.5. Then go as long as you can if it's a zoom lens. Again, if we're using the kit lens, you can go out to 42 millimeters. So 42 millimeters, then you'll be at f5.6, and then get as close as you can and frame the subject best you can. And that's the best way to get depth of field. But for general photography, really, you need to be at least 25 millimeters to start to see depth of field at f2, meaning shallow depth of field. I think that was your question, right? Oh, you want minimum, most depth of field. You want the opposite, not shallow, the most, right? The widest, the longest. In that case, I'm comfortable, again, we're talking about the same math, right? I'm comfortable at f5.6 at, say, 12 or 14 millimeters. Then the subject will need to only be, maybe 2 or 3 meters away, like 6 or 10 feet. And then that's wide enough for most photography. But if you want front to back sharpness, then yeah, I wouldn't go higher than f8 on the Olympus cameras, on Micro Four Thirds. And then get the subject, frame the subject as wide as you can, like use the widest millimeter lens that you have, in this case 25 millimeters or less, and then your depth of field should be okay. Because a lot of landscape shots that I do normally at, if I have my pro lens or something, I'll do it 12 millimeters, and I can shoot at f5.6 and everything will be sharp, front to back. I don't have any issues, because that's a full frame equivalent of f11, which is a lot of times recommended for landscape type photography, or even group shots. Like if you're talking about a group of maybe, a dozen people, maybe in 2 rows, you can shoot at f5.6, maybe f8, and you'll still be okay, and you'll use a wide angle lens like a 12 millimeter. That's what I would recommend. And Logan says the mic sound is better now, Rob. Clip, yeah. Sound is all about, it's a whole different thing, right? It's its own little sound, sound process. Audio is its own genre or niche. Audio is its own niche. You have to have a whole different skill set. But the number one thing, regardless of gear, right? The number one thing is proximity to the subjects talking, right? In this case. So I used to have the other mic, maybe 2 feet away, like this far away. Typically, sometimes I had it this far away, but even that little bit of distance, can make the sound lower quality. So this lav mic is what? Only this far away, right? And that's what really makes the biggest difference in audio. So I had to kind of rearrange things. I'm using my I don't know if I can get this out here without disconnecting anything, but this is my old Zoom H1. I've used it maybe once since I bought it, like a year or 2 years ago. And then I found out you can use it as an audio interface. So I plugged in my my lav mic into this, and this plugs into the computer. Because if I plug the mic directly into the computer has terrible audio, so it sounds terrible. So I'm going through this H1. I'm thinking about maybe getting a boom mic, because what a lot of YouTubers do is they have a boom mic, like one of these things, and they put it right above out of frame, like right here. And those sound really good, and I think I could do that, because the only problem with a lav mic is I'm now tethered to the computer, and as you know in my streams, a lot of times I get up and grab something, right, to show you guys. Oh, okay. And Levente says you like the desk mic better. Really? The transporter room? No, this is just some generic news studio thing. I don't know. I didn't even think about it when I got on today. I just kind of picked one and moved. But yeah, I like my TARDIS, and I really like my IT crowd background. That one's my favorite, I think. But blue is very complementary to my skin tone, right? Christian Von Latham, good to see you. You're only hearing the left channel. Oh, yeah, the right channel is a little bit weak. I don't know why. Let me check something. Apparently I can adjust it. That's going to be one side. I'll adjust it a little bit. Now I'm messing with stuff I don't know. We'll leave it alone. Okay. Is your stream oh, you know, there's a button here for mono. Let me try that. I need to get into the right screen. There. Okay, I set the mono button, so now we should be getting equal levels on both sides. All right. Yeah, that is weird though. Let me look. It's must be. I don't know. Anyway, according to Peter Forsgaard about lens diffraction can start at f11. On full frame cameras, yeah. On micro four thirds, I was watching one by Matty Silanto where he said it kind of starts after f5.6, and I'm kind of I'm kind of leaning towards. Oh, the volume's gone down. Okay, I can turn it up. That's maximum there. I'll go maximum here. That's the loudest I can make it. Okay. Yeah, so so I lean towards f5.6. I definitely can see diffraction when I'm shooting at like f22. You know, the images get really kind of break apart a little bit, but you know, at f11 you're still probably okay. But I try not to go beyond f8, mainly because you're not letting much light into the camera, and I prefer to shoot wider, you know, wider open as I can, so I can keep the ISOs low. And then, like I said, f5.6, usually I can get almost everything in focus. Yeah, Levente says f11 is fine on 1.8 primes. Yeah, I mean, I think you can get away with it, right? But I don't normally shoot that at that high an aperture because of the, you know, I don't want to go too high on the ISOs if I can help it. That's mono. You should center. Yeah. And Jeff is talking about, I was just going back, hyperfocal distance is a good thing to know. Yeah, you can look in the hyperfocal distance if you really want to get technical about depth of field. They have these apps you can put on your phone to calculate it, but I just frame things about 1/3 of the way into the frame, or distance wise, so 1/3 of the distance to the overall scene, and that's close enough for me at f5.6. And then Nature says f8 or f9 usually my limits unless a lot of light, but usually suffer from lower light. Yeah, in the UK, definitely. Of course, in California right now, the light's pretty low, isn't it? Hey, Lauren, how are you? Isn't diffraction dependent on the lens in use? Lens variant types, macro should have a good range. I don't know. I don't know, honestly, because you know, when you close the aperture down, it makes the small hole in the lens, so now the light has to bend even further, right? To produce the same image. And it's that bending of light through that small aperture is what causes the diffraction. If you want to get all semi-technical about it, but that's kind of the layman's term, or layman's way to describe it. As the light has to travel a little bit further, and then the further light has to travel, the more it diverges. And that's why, for example, mirrorless cameras in theory should produce better quality because of the flange distance is shorter. Hence the light has to travel, doesn't have to travel as far, so it won't diverge or spread as much. And closing the aperture down forces the light to bend even further. And as a kid, you made pinhole cameras. I did that once in school, elementary school. We made pinhole cameras. I don't remember using film though. That was I can't remember. It's too long ago. Dave says, you just made me understand diffraction for the first time. Now I'm even more dangerous. Yeah. There's a lot of little things in photography that you can kind of, you just try to understand best you can over time. So I've only been doing this, God, I can't believe it's been almost 8 years now. But when I started in photography, when I was, this was like late 2012, I didn't even know what aperture was. I was like, what is aperture? I had asked my buddy Walter, who helped me out a lot when I was starting, and I bought a Sony NEX6. I spent a lot of time researching cameras, and I ended up on a Sony NEX6, which I still have, by the way. It's right up there on the shelf. And I bought all kinds of lenses for it. I sold off all the lenses. I just kept the body with the kit lens. And it takes fine pictures, but the color science back then, the colors were just not great. And that wasn't really the issue for me with the Sony. It was more like it just felt like, and I think it still holds true today, is it just feels like a piece of technology. It doesn't feel like camera to me, and it doesn't inspire me to go out or really enjoy photography when you hold the camera. When I'm holding a camera, I get some certain satisfaction about the feel, the look and feel of it, where the dials are, the buttons, and the experience of taking a picture with a different kind of camera. And that's really one of the big reasons I like Olympus, is because it looks like a camera, clearly, and it feels like one. And the ergonomics are really good. Hello, Manuel from Palm Beach. Oh, lucky you. I need to get down to Florida. And what's this? Micro Four Thirds aperture is doubled like the focal length. Yes, it is doubled. No, 1.5 on APS-C cameras, Torin, but it's always double on Micro Four Thirds. So f5.6 is 35 millimeter equivalent, be f11. f4 would be f8, and so on. I've been shooting Micro Four Thirds so long now. I always have to, I always look at things, and I have to convert from 35 down to Micro Four Thirds for me to get a feel for what I'm buying. Right, when I look at lenses or anything online, I've totally, my mind is totally reversed. It was the other way around, right? I would always try and convert things back to 35 millimeters so I could get a feel for the field of view or the aperture, but now I have to convert the other way because I've been shooting Micro Four Thirds so long. Oh, thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. And Lysippus, oh, good to see you. Does f8 on Micro Four Thirds is f16 full frame? I keep thinking f numbers in terms of film, my error, so I have to remember to work at f4, f5.6, yes. And let's see, Simon says, hi from the UK. Been loving your live streams, but this is the first one I've managed to join live. Awesome, Simon. Well, glad to have you. I'm surprised people watch the live streams after they're already finished, right? Sometimes. I mean, I understand some people, they can't make it and they want to catch it because they already regularly attend, but then, and the views drop off drastically after the first day, but there's still a lot of people that watch the same day after it's already over, which always amazes me. And Pablo says, I shot a salami at at 1.8 and it was quite blurry at the tips. Yes. Yes, that's that's close-up photography, right? So you need to use higher apertures. I mean, there's macro lenses that go like f40, they're really high. If I remember my Nikon, I think it was the 60 millimeter macro, man, that thing would say like f40 or something in the display. So you needed tons of light. And with macro, you always use flash anyway. Generally, it's a good idea. And then Bob says, surely aperture is the aperture. It's the depth of field that is different as. You could finish that thought. I can maybe elaborate on that. Bob, I'm not sure what you were getting at there. It's the great banter. And Roberto Carlos Garcia, you see most afterwards, really. And Levente says, I shoot some portraits of myself inside and they got much more noise than pictures outside. It was on ISO 200. What could have caused that? Lack of light? Yeah, it's always lack of light. Even at low ISOs, if you don't have enough light, they can be noisy when you try to raise the exposure. Or even if it's exposed properly, you're going to see more noise because there's just not enough light hitting the sensor. And noise is basically what? There's a certain amount of noise in the camera that is always there, right? So if the noise is here, you have to bring in light to kind of compensate for that, right? So outside, let's say this is completely dark on my right hand here. If it's completely dark, there's no light, but you still have noise right here. That's going to show in the image. And then as you raise the light, when you go outside, the light goes way up here. Then the noise, the ratio, right, the signal to noise ratio, and they call light a signal in this case, is huge. So the noise is almost imperceptible. But let's say you're indoors and you expose properly, you might be only getting this much light. So the signal to noise ratio is much thinner, right? So that's why you see noise in low light, even at low ISOs, because there's a certain amount of noise internal to the camera, regardless of, well, there's always noise in the camera actually, and that's what produces most of the noise in the camera or most of the noise in your images is the internal noise in the camera, which is inherent in all electronic devices, like in sound, right? They always talk about a noise floor, and it's the same in video, or I mean in photography. There's always a noise floor that you have to overcome. And they talk about it a lot more in astrophotography, about noise floors in digital cameras, because you're dealing with extremely low light. So you have a noise floor here, and your light coming in might be this, right? And that's why in astrophotography they do a lot of stacking. They take multiple images and then they stack them together, because your noise floor doesn't change, and then you capture several images and then you keep stacking that light back down, or you stack the light so that ratio widens, right? And Canon is making some super slow lenses for full frame cameras, but like you say, f11 is like MFT f5.6. I assume you can crank the ISO up too. Interesting that their dynamic range on Canon is the concern. Yeah, you just have to expose Canon. Well, you need to expose properly regardless of camera. And if you have to start pushing and pulling things too much, more than 2 or 3 stops, I would just start bracketing or add a flash. Why, I mean, sometimes you don't have a choice, right? You have to shoot at high ISO or very high dynamic range scenes. But if you have a choice, I would bracket the shot or bring a flash. And I have some Olympus and Panasonic gear, love it. Been shooting on MFT since 2012. Started with the Olympus PL5. Yes, I was reading about the PL5. There was something interesting about it. Now I can't remember. But look at Deep Peer Review when they talked about the PL5. I think there was something unique about that camera that piqued my interest when I was reading the article. Like, oh, maybe I should get a PL5. You know, when I was shopping cameras, I almost got a Panasonic GX1 instead of the Sony NEX back then. I was this close. And then I don't know what made me decide to go to. I think it was because of the high ISO. I was worried about Micro Four Thirds. You know, the little bit that I knew back then, you know, I'd look at Deep Peer Review and compare images on their little charts. And whatever happened, it persuaded me to go with the Sony instead. And anyway, and now, you know, and I've kind of transitioned through different cameras since then. And Neo says, I finally found a hot shoe thumb grip for the EM10 III. It's molded for the Fuji XT series, but fits nicely, or fits perfectly with the M10. Okay, good. And thank you for the coffee this morning, Neo. I saw that just before I got onto the stream. I appreciate that. And Bob says, surely the aperture is the aperture. It's the depth of field that is different. Yes. Yes, aperture is aperture, meaning f5.6 is the same on all cameras or all lenses, right? So it's letting the same amount of light in regardless of the camera. But what changes the depth of field is the size of the sensor and the distance to the subject, right? And the field of view of the lens. Keeping the aperture as wide open as possible gives you more depth or shallower depth of field, but in terms of light, yeah, it's exactly the same. Same amount of light comes into the camera. I think that's what you're getting at. And Jurgen says, still am content with my EM5 and 25 1.8. And yeah, absolutely. Really, cameras haven't changed that much, honestly. I would go 15 years. Because if I don't know if you guys were here on my Thursday stream, let me see. But in my forum, whoops, wrong screen. This one, yeah. Let me show you guys. I got this E330, which I think most of you know by now. I have this E330 that Dale sent me. But I did a comparison on my site. Where is it? E330. So I took the E330 and I took the same picture and compared it against the EM1 Mark III. And on EM1 Mark III, I used the 12 to 40 Pro, and on the E330, I used the 14 to 54 f2.8, which was kind of the pro grade lens back in the day, right? And like, look at this shot. On the left here is the 7.5 megapixel E330, and I was pushing and pulling shadows just to see how much I could recover. And then over here on the right is the Olympus. And if I punch in a little closer, so clearly, you know, 7.5 megapixels is not going to compete with 20. But in terms of pushing and pulling the shadows, pretty much the same. Now, I did recover more highlights out of the EM1 Mark III, as you can tell up here. And let's see. But when you look at the pictures side by side, right, like these two, like if I don't tell you which one is which, you wouldn't know just looking at them like this. Certainly even when going to this, right, it's unless you really punch in and look at the resolution difference in terms of color and everything else, they look exactly the same, these two at the top here. I just cannot see any difference, which surprised me a little bit. But okay. Oh, Wudang is here. How are you? And Dave is asking, what is the camera you wish you had never bought? Oh, let me back up a little bit. I'll come back to that question. Maybe ETTR could have helped me. Yeah, I mean, ETTR is basically ideally leaving the gathering more light than you would otherwise, right? With a normal exposure. So it can help. It can help. You just have to leave the shutter speed open or use a wider aperture, right? Light can be a real problem even outside of shooting under wood, trees, canopy of trees. There becomes a light problem. Yes. Your sentences seem cut off. Oh, sorry, talking to Dave. Pictures in Oregon right now look like they're taken on Mars. Oh my goodness. And Wudang, yes, good to see you. Oh, thank you. It's the white shirt, maybe. Appreciate that. Simon says, I was with MFT Sensor Tech, really started to give APS-C a run for money. Or it was when. Convinced me to dump the D300 for a lighter system. Yeah. D300 is an awesome little camera though, right? Or not little, but it was their pro-grade APS-C from Nikon. And Dave, yeah, what is the camera you wish you had never bought? Oh, man, I would say probably this Fuji X-T30. I mean, it's a fine camera, but I just never use it. Just sitting up there on my shelf. I'll take it out one day and use it. I don't know. That's the one, because I paid like 11 or 1200 bucks for it. And I've had it almost a year now, and I don't think I even got 1,000 clicks on it, you know? And most of those clicks are just test shots, right? Not even like real photo walks or using it at all for my own enjoyment or pleasure. It was just a, yeah, Fuji X-T30 is the camera I wish I never bought. That, the X100F I had for a very short window that I traded in and got this Fuji X-T30, and I still wasn't happy, you know, going from an X100F to a Fuji X-T30. Yeah, that's my answer. Didn't have to think. To every other camera, you know, I didn't spend that much on, right? So that I, you know, there are cameras I don't use much, but I didn't spend that much on them. And Wudang says the aperture is very dependent on projection angle. This is why full frame often has slower lenses than MFT. Basically, if the projection from the aperture from the sensor is wider, the lens is often slower. Yeah, I mean, again, it's that field of view, right? And the way the light bends when you start closing the aperture down. But honestly, just set the aperture what it needs to be and take a picture. You know, you don't need to overthink it. And Jurgen says, just sent the XT4 back because direct comparison of daylight macro shots looks so similar and not worth spending 2,000 euros. The EM5 is still too good. Yeah, it's especially macro, when you're this close to the subject, it's very hard to tell a difference, you know, with good lighting and everything. It's very, very difficult. And oh, hey Arthur, how are you? And hi Des, good to see you. And Levente says maybe you should get some better lenses for the Fuji. Oh, well, it's not the lens so much. I mean, I have the what is it? I don't know, it's an f2.8 something lens, the kit lens. That was at f2.8. I can't even, hold on. I'm just gonna grab it. It's an 18 to 55 f2.8. I think it's a variable. f2.8 to f4 with OIS. And, you know, everybody talks about how great these cameras are. I mean, you can't swing a dead cat without, you know, somebody telling you Fuji makes the best cameras ever. And I was not that impressed, to be honest. I mean, it's a good camera, but to me, the Olympuses are so good that getting another good camera is not as big a deal, right? If you drive the Ferrari, you know, why, you know, you get into a Corvette, yeah, it's nice, but it's not like better. It's kind of this, I don't know how to, I don't have any good analogies for it. I just bought this camera, never use it. That's like, you know, $1,200 down the drain, really. Mft Shines in macro, much less aberrations than full frame equivalents. The Olympus 60 is gold for this, yes. Everything I've seen from that 60 macro has been amazing. And Dave is saying, with macro shooting, it seems that there are two main things that separate good from excellent, lighting and focus. That kind of sums it up for photography in general, though, not just macro, right? I guess with general photography, you have to take into account composition more so than in macro, because macro, the entire frame is the composition, is the subject normally. Camera I wish I never bought hard. Many years ago, I bought a Pentax SFX, my first autofocus SLR. I upgraded from a Pentax Program A. What was the lesson? A better camera does not make a better photographer. Yes. And Sefron says the Fuji doesn't have in-body stabilization, right? It does not. It is a fixed sensor. Lenses have, you know, stabilization. A lot of them. Some of them don't. I was having, you know, slow shutter speed problems. You know, I can hand hold an Olympus like 1/30th, maybe 1/20th of a second generally without any issues. But if I don't have in-body image stabilization, man, I need to be at 1/60th or better to get a sharp image without motion blur, at least for me. For just on the fly stuff. I mean, if I concentrate, yeah, I can get down pretty slow shutter speeds on almost anything. But when I'm just out and about on a photo walk and I want to take a picture, usually if the shutter speed is 1/20th, 1/30th, I'm okay on Olympus. On anything else, I have to be very conscious. Just like when I took out the E330 last week, oh my God, everything was blurry. And Eddie Cook is asking, you've had the EM1 Mark II for 3 years and loving it. Is it worth upgrading to the M3? The only reason you'd upgrade to the Mark III on from a Mark II is if you want something very specific features out of this. The most significant, I think, is the handheld high-res shot mode. If you want that, then yeah, I would get it for that. If you want the Starry Sky AF, like if you do astrophotography, get it for that. The Live ND. Or if for some reason you want to be able to charge the battery in camera or run the camera off an external battery. You can't do both at the same time, but you can pick one, right? Charge a battery or run the camera off an external power bank. If you need those kind of things, yes. Now that said, you know, for high-res shot mode, you can use a tripod on EM1 Mark II and you're fine. So if you're going to do a high-res shot, just bring a tripod, right? Starry Sky AF, It's a nice little feature, makes things a little easier, but you know, you can always manually focus, right, to get your stars in focus. And live ND, honestly, I think it's better to just use a real ND filter than to use the live ND feature in this camera. So, so again, this camera gives you some more options to shoot without a tripod to get easier focus for astro. It has a couple of extra features, but in terms of image quality and ultimate, you know, the end result, there's really nothing new on that camera. So I wouldn't upgrade to an EM1 Mark III if you have an EM1 Mark II. Now the EM1 Mark III, I got it, you know, I don't know, because I'm a fanboy, right? I just love Olympus, but I really like the handheld high-res shot mode. So I would, for me, I'm getting it just for that because I do street photography at night, and using high-res shot mode stacks the images, so it gives me cleaner high ISO images handheld for street photography where you're not worried about motion and things like that too much. At least the kind of photography I do. So I really like that feature, and to me that kind of made it worth it. And I've regulated my EM1 Mark II to do live streams, which is what I'm using now. And any suggestions for macro lens? 60, Jurgen, everybody buys the 60 2.8 macro. It's awesome. That's the only one, and it's priced right? $300-400, give or take. Nothing else to consider really. There's a 30 macro, but your working distance is very small. The 60 macro gives you a little more working distance, and you can, it's more of a multi-purpose lens. You can use it for other things too, like portraits. The 30 macro can also be a multi-purpose, but I don't think the macro side is quite as good in terms of working distance. You have to get like this close to the subject to get 1-to-1, whereas a 60 macro you can get about this far, which when you have a little more working distance, it allows you to add light into the subject without having to worry about getting shadow from the barrel of the lens. And Rob might get a 60 macro one day. Yeah, one day. Ibis, pay once. Lens stabilization, pay over and over and over. That's funny. Dave says, with the 12-40 Pro, the 40-150 Pro, and the 60 macro, I feel lens complete, except for the 100-400. Yeah. Oh, was there a question about the 100? Oh, Levente says, for video, the Fuji is better, but it does matter at how much. I don't think so. I just hate the video capabilities of my EM10 too. Even for video, I wasn't terribly impressed. You know, it does 4K, but I think it's limited to 10 minutes. So there's some limitations in 4K. But you know, I'll just use my M1. Yeah, I really love the XT3, XT4, the look and feel of those. But in practice, I don't think I like the ergonomics in general. They just look good. They're beautiful cameras. And Nature says, yes, the M1 Mark III has a lot of features for me that make it better than my Mark II. Yes, it does. It does have a lot of features. But again, nothing you can't do with your M1 Mark II for the most part, except for running the camera off an external power pack. The build quality, image quality, ultimately is all the same. And Dave says, I love the charging the camera with my cable on my OM1 III. Really? I don't use it that much because the battery lasts so long for me. And I carry extras. And the 45mm Olympus lens is fantastic value. Yes, it's excellent. I paid like $200 for mine. It's awesome. And Levente's asking, would you jump on a 25 f1.8 used for 150 euros? If you don't know if you need it, don't buy it. You know, a deal will always come around. I mean, more often than not, the 25mm is like $250 US. So that's what, maybe 200 euros all day long. 150 euros a really good deal. But if you don't really need it, don't waste 150 euros. I mean, primes generally you want to buy because you have a very specific need and you know you need it. Otherwise, you know, you get your kit lens has that focal length already. So if you just need that field of view, it's in your kit lens. If you need to shoot in lower light with that specific focal length, then yeah, prime makes sense. In fact, I'm using the 25mm f1.8 right now for this vlog or this live stream. It's the perfect focal length, and I can chop it down to f2. I can work with just one light here instead of, God, I had 5 lights set up before, you know, for different reasons, but now I'm good. And robtrek, I would be interested in seeing how the M1 Mark III works handheld high-res shot mode for shooting fungi in reduced lighting conditions. Yes, I think, like I said, if you can hand if you can hand hold about 1/30th of a second, because I think it takes 16 shots. So the problem is how long can you hand hold a thing? So if you take 16 over 1/30th is about a half a second. So if you can hand hold for a half a second a regular shot, you should be able to hand hold at 1/30th of a second, which is relatively low light, like fungus, right? Handheld high-res shot should work, I think. Let me see. Let me see what the light is in here. I'm at 1/6 of a second, so no way. No way I'm going to be able to do it. Let me raise the ISO. Doesn't matter for this shot, right? So I'm at ISO 3200. Well, I don't need to be that high. Let's try 16. Put a card in. Oh, it's got a card. Why does it say no card? Dang it, another. There we go. All right, so let's put this in the handheld high-res shot and see if I can hand hold 1/40th of a second. I mean, fungi, you should really be using a flash or adding light somehow. HDR1? No, not HDR, duh. Where's high-res shot? Here we go. Let's turn on, oh, let's give it a 2-second delay. And shooting method handheld. Okay. All right, so I'm in high-res shot mode at 1/40th of a second. I'm gonna take a picture of my my mug here. Let me get to the minimum focusing distance. Okay, it's building. Let's see if I can handhold 1/40th of a second, which is about a 1/4 second, give or take. A little more than a 1/4 second. I'm gonna punch in. Yeah, no problem. Now, if your shutter speed drops below 1/20th of a second, now you're talking about hand holding for 1 second, right? So that's going to be a problem for me. So that's something you have to think about. Hand holding in low light, right, is ultimately how long do you have to hold the camera still? I don't know if high-res shot mode works when I have the HDMI plugged in. Oh yeah, it works. So here's my shot, right? Where's the info button? This was at 1/40th of a second high-res shot. So if I zoom in, you can see that, yeah, I nailed it. There's really no motion blur. Let's see. I mean, I have to deal with depth of field a little bit too, but yeah, that looks good. Okay. So nature, hopefully that answers your question and makes sense about using handheld high-res shot mode in reduced light. Wow, so many people commented while I was doing that shot. Hold on. And Wuday says 25mm standard lens for MFT. I wouldn't go for it. Get a creative lens instead. Depends on your taste. Yeah. Like I said, it was, a lot of people like to shoot 25mm for street photography, and then in which case, having a fast lens will let you go into lower light, twilight, things like that. But what is the light you have found to work well with a 60 macro? Just use a regular flash. I use a Godox TT350. And just diffuse it if you can. And Marsha, hi. Good to see you. Yes, I just received my 17 f1.8. I'm ready to use it. Awesome. Congrats. That's an awesome lens. My favorite lens, actually. And Lauren has some stats on the Olympus pricing for lenses there. And Wudang says, my most used 25mm lens on MFT was the 0.95, the Miticon. And I shot mostly with it and even took videos with that. Became very popular. Yes. Yeah, it'd be neat to shoot with a super fast lens. The fastest I've ever shot with is like a 1.6. If I would use MFT now, I'd go for a series anamorphic lens, 35 or 50. I've seen those, yeah. You're really into video lately, Wudang, which is cool. I love my recent Refurb 25 f1.8. Oh yeah, you got one during the sale, right? For under 200. And Levente says, I mainly consider it for complement my 17mm street photography. The kit lens needs to be way stopped down to get sharp enough. I really like the feel of primes. Yeah, then I would get it. Just get it then. I mean, there's one thing to buy something because it's a really good deal. But if it's something you want or enjoy, just get it. Especially if it's at a good deal. Because it sounds like you'll use it. But when somebody says, I don't know if I need it, then I would be like, don't buy it because it's a good deal. There'll always be good deals. But if you want it and you think you'll enjoy it, you should get it. The Zhongyi Speed Booster, that will get you a full frame depth of field. Yes, it can help. It can help. I'm not a big fan of the speed boosters. And it's not because it potentially reduces image quality or anything like that. It's not really that big a deal, but I felt like I could always find a Micro Four Thirds lens that suited my needs without having to use a speed booster. But if you enjoy adapting lenses and shooting with vintage lenses, the speed booster is really a nice addition to that hobby, right? Lauren says that Lumix 12 to 32 kit lens works well in most any scenario unless more light is required. Yes, it's a great lens. I use it. That's my go-to lens personally. I use it personally and professionally, actually. And for street photo, the 12mm f2 is a must, but it's not cheap. Yes, it's not cheap. Another alternative might be the Panasonic Leica 15mm. I think it's an f1.7. A lot of people like that for street. That's still on my short list of lenses to get. Every time I think about that lens, I just want to go buy it. But then I have the 17, which is very good. So I just, that's what stops me from buying the 15 from Leica. Yes, the 45 f1.8 is a very good prime. And the 12mm is more usable range of real wide angle lenses depending on what you need. Yeah, the 12mm f2 is awesome. Awesome lens. I use it for vlogging a lot. If I'm going to be vlogging at night, like I used to do a lot of, I haven't done much this year, but I use the 12mm f2. And Nature says, at the moment I've been using an LED light bank with the Fungi. Recently bought wireless flashlights and diffusers. Okay. Yep, Levente, you should go for the 25. Also, and Neil says also the 12mm has a metal build and manual focus clutch, very tiny and discreet. Yeah, it's a good lens. Where is mine? Right here. I mean, I got the lens hood on it, but it, you know, without the lens hood, it's very compact lens. It's hard to tell looking at it on the camera here, right? But like compared to compared to the E330 lens, or what's a more reasonable comparison? Here's a 12 to 40 Pro, right? This is a 12 to 40 Pro lens. Here's a 12mm f2. So this is just as wide as this, but a full stop faster at f2, whereas this is 12mm at f2.8. So yeah. And also the 12mm, yeah, and really low noise on that one. What are you referring to, low noise? On that picture of my mug? Yeah, the other thing with high-res shot mode, right, because of stacking images, it does reduce noise quite a bit. So I love it at night, low light photography. And Jurgen's asking, which single lens would you be happy with to have with you if you were cast a 17mm f1.8? No question. It's very versatile. It's not terribly, it's not super wide, but then I don't know. It's a good. It's a focal length I really like. And Nature says yes, very much. Thanks for the info on the high res. Okay, good. Yeah, that answered the question there. Aren't the Voigtlanders like 0.95? Yeah, they have a few, but they're massively heavy lenses. I mean, worth every penny, and the quality that I've seen has been excellent, but yeah, it's not, those lenses are not on my list of lenses to get, really. Oh, hey Randy, how are you? Keeping safe, I hope, with all the fires going on out there. And got in 3 miles today. That's good. I keep saying it. I gotta get on a schedule so I can work out. It's so easy to just not work out. And I remember when I used to work out all the time, I didn't enjoy it because I was always tired, like exhausted and sore every time. The only time I really enjoyed working out was running, because it's just very freeing. You know, you get out on the trail or wherever and you start running, and I don't know, I find that very relaxing. But I hated like running on a treadmill or just pushing weight in the gym. I did it because, you know, it was really healthy, and it's what you do when you're young, I guess. I don't know. Something you should do your whole life, really, but The thing about the MF clutch is that flicking it in the MF doesn't automatically enable focus peaking. That's true. I think Olympus store offering $349 after my discount on the 17. I guess that was an okay deal. Yeah. Yeah, if you got it brand new, that's great. I mean, I bought mine used for $250, but $350 brand new is fine. And Randy says 17,500 acres burned and about 35% contained. Was about 5 miles from me on the other day. Wow. And Bob says my last photo walk was with my dog, 8.5 miles. Man. My dog would be so happy if we went for an 8-mile walk. Because I did a 2-mile walk and he was still like full of energy. I said, I gotta go home. I'm tired. Watch YouTube videos on a treadmill. Yeah, maybe. Oh, you got some shots on your Flickr? Take a quick look. Should you have, I should have, yeah, there you are. Which button is it? This one? No, this one. All right. Yeah, wow, is that the sun? Holy smokes. Man, that's amazing. Look at that fire. Golly. Crazy. All these people evacuating. I'm so sad. It's sad. Look at that fire. Wow. See, that's why I'll never move to California. I mean, between the earthquakes and the fires and the mudslides and locusts, I don't know. It just feels like the apocalypse over there all the time. And fires are as annual as hurricanes. I know, right? Yeah, California. It's nice to visit there if you can find a window where there isn't a fire, mudslide, or a earthquake. It's fine because the weather's always perfect over there otherwise, right? But I'm thinking Tennessee or South Carolina ultimately. Once it burns, it's good. I don't know. Time 4 o'clock. Okay, I'm good. I have another stream starting at 4:30. I know Bob. Bob is like my unofficial moderator. He always keeps me in check. And then Levente says, "Did I already tell you to check out my Instagram if you'd like?" It's okay. I can check it. Let's see. What you guys are up to. Oh yeah. Here we go. This one, right? That must be you. Huh. Young man. Must be your girlfriend here. Hey, this looks familiar. Didn't I edit this picture? Yeah, look at these kids. Oh my god, that's crazy. Yeah, these all look familiar. Or some of them look familiar, I should say. Yep, I've edited this one. Levente is really reliable, sending images in for me to edit every week. It's cool. Oops, there, I followed you back. You should be good now. Here we go. Oh, the JIP news. Okay, yeah, let's talk about that for a minute. Let me pull that up. We'll read it together. I didn't go in depth on it yet, but Bob sent me a link this morning. That's what I'm pulling up. I need this button. No, this button. No, dang it, this one. Here we go. All right. Let's zoom in. Well, about as much as I can zoom in. So here are the key takeaways, right? JIP will not sell. And they're saying that the hope is to achieve profitability in the first year. After that, instead of selling it to external companies, they will search for a way to revive it. I don't know what they mean by revive it, right? Because if you're profitable, then you've revived it. But what are you trying to revive after you've already made it profitable? That's what's confusing to me. And then they cite the PC Bio business as an example of, you know, their success. I wouldn't brag about PC Bio if I were JIP, but because you know what they did is they pulled the Sony Vios out of the market and only sold those in Japan. So they really downsized the Sony Vio down to a very small market. And they're only recently been trying to expand back into the US. You can find their laptops now on Amazon. But it's nothing like the Sony Vios when Sony owned it, right? The original Sony Vios were really very innovative, very creative, generally well built. They weren't the best computers, but they were always innovating, right? The Sony Vios. And then when JIP took over, they mainstreamed it and only sold in the market that they could make money in. I guess it was Japan. For whatever reason, they narrowed it down to Japan. I guess the international market was too competitive. And maybe that's what they're talking about is if they can get the first year to be profitable, what are they going to do after that? And then JIP will maintain the Olympus brand. So that's interesting and will not withdraw from overseas market. So I guess the cameras are still going to say Olympus on them is what I'm getting from that. And they're going to continue and they're going to keep the plant in Vietnam. So Olympus built a new, manufacturing facility in Vietnam. So they are, they're going to keep that and use it. I mean, that's a valuable asset, right? They just built it just a couple years ago. And then they plan to regenerate the MFT business. So the key to success is focusing on unique features and technologies. They plan to shift from consumer-oriented market to a business-oriented market. Its features can be maximized. JIP also plans to focus on video business, which so far Olympus hasn't really focused on. We are considering various markets such as consumer products specialized for video and business such as surveillance cameras. So that tells me they're not going to make, regular cameras anymore, like for photography. So I think what's going to happen is they're going to support the cameras that have already been released, with warranty and stuff like that. But it doesn't sound like they're going to release any new Olympus cameras for photographers, at least from what I get from this. I mean, you always have to take these things with a grain of salt because what was Olympus saying forever? About they were saying forever they weren't going to sell and all of that, right? Back to the screen. So I need an ad blocker. As soon as I put an ad blocker in, then I can't get to half the sites I want to look at anyway. So yeah, I wouldn't call that good news for Olympus photographers, honestly. The only good news is that if you have an Olympus camera now, they're going to continue to support it, it looks like. The bad news is I don't feel like they're going to be focusing on developing any new cameras for photographers. It looks like they're going to go into surveillance, like video cameras. Surveillance cameras or videos. So, you know, like Ring sells those security cameras for homes, right? That you can, that's what I feel like, but they'll do it with micro four thirds chips instead of the little tiny sensors. So you get very high-end security cameras for people at home and for businesses and things like that. That's what it sounds like to me. Who knows what they're really going to do? So I'm not thrilled by that article that I just read, other than they're not selling Olympus, but it doesn't sound like they're going to expand on the consumer, you know, make cameras like this anymore. So maybe there's never going to be an EM1 Mark IV. That would be kind of sad. If they're going to do video cameras, if they're talking video cameras like make this more like a GH5 or something, then, but I wasn't getting that feeling from reading that. I was getting the feeling they're going to drop consumer cameras. Mudeng says in 20 minutes, yes, in 20 minutes. And Lauren says, I'm considering the 14mm Lumix, which has both good reviews and some saying not the sharpness. The charts look at the lens review sites. 198 went on sale, but too wide for street. It's not really too wide. I use my 12mm time to time for street. You just have to get closer. And Roberto says he reckons they might sell the name like Kodak did. Maybe. I don't think they can sell the Olympus name because Olympus is still a company. And Lawrence says, JIP I assume would have little in the way of research department. Rob, for ad blocking, use Ublock. No. I'm not using an ad blocker. I mean, partially because, you know, ads support the content that I'm looking at, right? Just like ads support my YouTube channel. So I try to respect that to some degree as also a content producer or business person. So I don't tell anybody else not to use them, but me personally, I'm fine with ads. I wish everyone would go back to an advertising model because I hate paying subscription fees. You know, like frickin' Amazon Prime videos, Netflix Prime. Now they got Hulu, they got CBS All Access. If you want to watch Star Trek, they got you know, everybody's subscription now, right? You know, I don't mind watching a few commercials during a TV show if I don't have to pay a subscription. I mean, I know that's different than ad blocking, but it's kind of related, right? In terms of advertising, I don't mind watching. You know, just like on YouTube, there's a lot of ads in the videos, but I let them run unless they're like those 5-10 minute ones. They got these really long ass ads sometimes, but the little, you know, 15-30 second ads I let run because I appreciate the content that the person is putting out there. So to the same extent, that's why I don't really use ad blockers. It's personal choice. I'm not saying you should do that. I'm just saying that's what I do. Hey Plato, how are you? Good to see you. God, talking about dinner, you're making me hungry. I might have to end a few minutes early so I can grab a bite to eat before I start the next stream. Rob, can you turn on or off any site you choose with Ublock? Of course it works with YouTube too, but don't tell Google. Oh. No, I'm not using it. Arthur says, then someone on the body it says, somewhere on the body it says JIP uses Olympus brand name like under license from Olympus. Yeah, okay. That makes sense. Randy says $6 a month for what? For Ublock? I'm definitely not paying Ublock $6 a month. The worst is when they do both commercials and subscriptions. Yes, I know. YouTube adverts are driving me nuts lately. Every 4 or 5 minutes sometimes. Yeah, they've kind of upped the advertising a little bit, right? If it's an 8-minute video or longer, you're going to see at least one up front and one in the middle. Sometimes you see one on the end, you know, if you stick around that long. Oh, Randy's paying YouTube Premium. I see. $6 a month. Yeah, I don't like it. I'd rather watch ads than pay a subscription. Like even Netflix. Netflix is awesome. They have so many shows I really love on Netflix. But if they said, you know, we're gonna put advertising in and you don't have to pay a subscription fee, I would sign up for that. But I pay $6 or I pay $12 or $13 a month for Netflix because I just enjoy their programming so much. And I do enjoy watching without ads, but at the same time, I'm not into paying $13, $14 a month either. Oh, thank you, Arthur. You let the ads run. I appreciate that. I mean, hopefully the ads will be of something you're interested in. Because even in my Windows settings and things, I make sure I have everything on so that I only see ads that are going to be relevant to me, right? I don't want to see ads for like, you know, I don't know, garage door openers or whatever. You know, I want to see camera ads. So if there's a deal out there and somebody's advertising it, I'll see it. Oh, you just finished Cobra Kai. Cobra Kai is awesome. That is like one of the best reboots I've ever seen of any TV show. Uh, they did a really good job. I think Battlestar Galactica was a good reboot, but Cobra Kai, love that one. Trouble with ads, I keep buying stuff. Yeah, you refuse to buy Adobe and Microsoft. I agree. Yeah, I don't pay Microsoft because they have what, their Office suite. I just use LibreOffice. Adobe I have to buy though because of my pro work, but for me it's a write-off. If I didn't have a business like doing things professionally, I would not pay a subscription fee for Adobe. I would just use frickin' Photoscape X or Olympus Workspace for free for editing my photos. But because the Adobe Photoshop has some very specific things I need, I'm stuck with paying for it. But that's because I do it professionally, so and I can buy a subscription. No, not. Subscription to what? Lauren, what are you talking about? Yeah, leave you in peace after the content starts. That would be nice, right? They used to have it like your video had to be over 10 minutes long on YouTube before they would put an ad in the middle, and they dropped that down to 8 minutes. So it's good for us, right, as content creators, but I get what you're coming from is like you watch an ad or two in the beginning and then you want to kind of just finish, right? But that's why a lot of YouTube videos you'll see, they used to all be 10 minutes and 1 second, 10 minutes and 10 seconds, right? Because everybody's trying to get that extra ad or revenue in their ads. You know, my videos, they're as long as they need to be. They're really long. But it wasn't because I was trying to get extra ad revenue, right? But it's just, it takes me a while to explain things sometimes. Oh, what do I use instead of Office? I use Libre. Libre, Office. Wait, let me check my Windows here. Yeah. LibreOffice, free. And Nature says, I do not pay any subscription other than yearly virus Trojan scanner ad blocker. He has a firewall operating on us. Yeah, I found that the Windows, if you have Windows, the Windows virus, what do they call it? Defender, Windows Defender, it scored very high in terms of blocking viruses. I know a couple years ago it was kind of at the bottom of the list, but now it's extremely good. So I just use the Windows Defender and Firewall. And Roberto says, gotta walk the dog. He's jumping on the bed, hitting. I know. Dogs can be pushy, right? Darktable is free. Yes, open source alternative to Lightroom. Yeah, there's so many free things out there. Darktable is very popular. Oh, Music Sound Gear says the consensus is that Windows Defender is all you need. Yeah, so that's all I use now. I used to use Bitdefender before I found out that Windows Defender was just as good. I mean, nothing is foolproof, right? So you just have to kind of mitigate the sites that you visit. And Kaspersky, yes, very good. Photoscape X is a good editor and viewer. Yes, Photoscape X is excellent. Like I said, if I didn't have to manage thousands of photos because of my pro work, I would use any of these other alternatives, no problem. Even Affinity Photo for like $50 or Luminar for $80. And if you want to pay a little bit, I think Photoshop Elements is one of the best options because it has that photo management and it's got a really good editing suite in it. And it's like $80. You can get it for like $50 sometimes if you really wait. But I'm gonna put it in my shopping cart and see if it ever comes down to $50 and I'll buy it. Then I'll start doing tutorials with that because that's a really good software, I think, Photoshop Elements. Ransomware protection. Yeah, LibreOffice is open source. Yep. All good stuff. So I use free things as much as I can. And can I make the next topic chat video about third-party manual lenses like 7 Artisans? I could, but I don't have a lot of third-party lenses. I have a few, right? But I wouldn't call myself an expert on third-party, but I can talk about it. That's not a bad idea. So Sunday, you want to do it on Sunday or Thursday or Tuesday? I have them Sunday, Thursday, Tuesday. What's best for you, Arthur? You tell me and I'll do it. In 5 minutes to the next stream. Yes, I need to get on to my next stream. So okay, free office works well. Good to know. Oh, Marcia, yeah, I can't do Affinity anymore because my free trial expired. So I'm not going to be able to do the Affinity presentation. But okay, I have to run. Everyone, thanks so much for joining me today. It's always fun hanging out and talking to everyone, and hopefully I was able to show you a few things along the way, and you've certainly taught me things along the way. And Chuck thinks the Fifine mic work better. Really? Okay. I'll have to think about that because when I was testing at home and playing back, it seemed like this was better. But I'll watch the replay and see. When I replay the video on my TV, I'll be able to tell the difference between today and last week. But again, thanks everybody for joining. I'll be back on Sunday. I'm going over to my live stream photo editing now, so you can join me there. But either way, we'll see you again on Sunday. Thanks for coming in today. There's a button for this.